once again, welcome to Leading Edge, a place to let those stories of the week breathe. I'm Jeff Smith. Coming up in just a few minutes, it's about a year away, and some say it could make a multi-million-dollar impact on our region. That update is straight ahead. But first, according to the Gun Violence Archive, so far this year, and as of June 12th, there have been more than 290 mass shootings across the U.S. A mass shooting is characterized as having 4 or more victims killed in the attack. They contend, for the most part, mass shootings are an American phenomenon. So, for our conversation today, we thought it best to bring you an outsider's perspective. Unni Turrettini is a human connection expert, author, and speaker. She hails from Oslo, Norway. She's in town this week as we record as part of a number of local events, including the All Rise Live Global Summit put on by our friend Diana Patton. And she travels the world sharing details on her research on the real drivers of mass shootings. So, Unni, we say to you, good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. As we talked a little bit about the gun research that has been done over the years and what we see as mass shootings is concerned, I want to give viewers a perspective of why you look into this, why you are so driven to get answers.
Yeah, so we had really a massacre in Norway in 2011. When Anders Breivik killed 77 people in one day. And when that happened, it was first of all, it was such a blow to my country, such a shock, and also to the world. And that led me to...
You're at what point in your life when this happened?
So I was living in Switzerland at the time. I'm Norwegian by origin, but I lived abroad most of my adult life in the United States, in Switzerland, in France. And I was living in Switzerland, and I remember driving in my car and a friend calling me and telling me there's been a huge explosion in the center of Oslo. And so I stopped the car and I tried to call home and getting no response. All the lines were saturated. It was impossible to get through for the first few hours. Yeah, exactly. Mass hysteria. We didn't know what was happening. And we thought, in the beginning, we thought it was, Al-Qaeda, we were thinking about 9/11, and, we thought it was an outside, enemy attacking Norway. And then we learned after a few hours that there was one perpetrator, a lone wolf killer, and he was one of us. He looked like me, could have been my younger brother, and that was difficult to grasp. And he had never done anything illegal, in his past. So I had to know, how can this happen? How could someone who grew up like me, look like me, do something so horrendous? And I started researching because I couldn't find the answers during, in what came out in the media. So I started doing my own research. And that led me to studying other similar mass killers around the world as well, and also here in the United States.
Is there anything that stands out, obviously specific to the U.S. And I kind of opened today talking about an outsider's perspective. You have both perspectives, but from a 30,000-foot view, what's going on?
So there's what I found, and this was really astonishing to me, was that none of these killers, so no matter their background, where they came from, social status, all these things, all of them struggled with loneliness. They didn't feel like they belonged in our society. And to me, that really hit home because I had moved around so much in my life, and I knew that feeling.
But you never got yourself to the edge and went over into a violent attack. So what is pushing them? What is your research showing?
That's right. And this is where it gets really interesting also, is that there are very, very few female mass shooters. Almost all of them are men. And so that is really interesting because when we look at, and I spoke to the FBI about this as well, and their psychologists, and what I learned in this process is that men, when they're desperate enough, they can go and hurt other people, whereas women tend to self-destruct. And of course, there are men who self-destruct too, and this is also a form of self-destruction. But it's either these men have such an issue trying to find their place in society, and they try to connect with groups. They even go to extremist groups, and they're even rejected there.
When we come back, I want to talk not only about guns, but also about mental health and where your research has shown those trends. Stay with us. We've got more to come. Next segment coming up. She hails from Norway, but she's here with us this week on Leading Edge. Unni Turrettini, she is here talking about gun violence, mass shootings, your research around the globe. And the one thing I wanted to ask you about, you know, there's so many times when these happen, when these mass shootings happen, and as we said, there have been 290 plus in the U.S. so far this year, we want to lay blame immediately. We want to say it's the guns, it's culture, it's so many other things. What is it? What are we finding? What are you finding?
Well, first of all, I think it's really too bad that we jump to conclusions and that we blame. It's so easy.
But is it so wrong of us to do that? Because there have been so many, and it's like, doggone it, we need an answer.
Absolutely.
Why? How do we stop this?
Absolutely, and we're desperate for answers. But I think we need to really dig deep into what is going on here besides the guns. Because I think, yes, I come from a country where we do regulate guns, and for us that's completely normal. However, I do think the polarization in this country is, we're not getting anywhere when we're trying to, one side wants to remove all the guns and the other side is like, absolutely not. And so I think where we can really start making a difference is asking ourselves, well, why is this happening in the first place? What's going on?
Let me ask you this, because you look at Uvalde and what happened in Texas and the tragedy, the heartbreak of seeing all those young people taken away from us. And do you have any explanation to why the harm of children? And I know you said men want to go out and do harm. That was a female, right? Yeah.
In Uvalde, that was a man. So yeah, but there has been absolutely a female as well, absolutely. So, but that is very rare that we see that. But I think we're seeing more and more hopelessness in our society, more and more divide and desperation. And that is a really bad cocktail. And what the difference I see in the United States from Europe is also the medication, the use of medication in the United States, and also the lack of trust in ourselves, the lack of confidence in ourselves, the lack of confidence and trust in leadership, in not knowing that the person next to me will have my back. And when you get into that sort of desperation and hopelessness, that's when things get really dangerous.
We've talked about mental health for so long now, especially coming out of the pandemic, and trying to put more resources toward it. We've also discussed the fact that a lot of the mental health related issues happened and were building way before the pandemic ever started. So how much has your research shown that, yes, this is something the U.S. really needs to hone in on?
Well, absolutely. And now the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, has just come out with an advisory. And he is stating clearly there that loneliness is the most urgent health issue and security issue for the United States at the moment. And he says that 1 in 2 Americans are dealing with loneliness, and that was up until 2020. So, we believe that the numbers are higher now coming out of the pandemic, because what happens when we are in isolation and in fear for a long time is that tends to enhance the feeling of isolation, suspicion in other people, and that feeling of loneliness. So. The numbers are likely much higher.
And do we see it? I mean, as far as across the board, no matter what the age is, it knows no bounds? So
loneliness is the hardest hit in the younger population. So from 15 to 25, that's where we really, those are the people who struggle the most. And very often these school shooters, they're young. They're in their sort of early 20s, even, late teens. So, and I think why the children, often I think what we see is there is some sort of they know that when you hurt children, that's going to get a lot of attention. And what we're seeing is this really strong need to feel that they matter. And when you don't...
Once again, going back to the loneliness.
Exactly. And when you don't feel like you have any other resources to show the world that I'm here and I matter and I'm valuable, you can go... I mean, that's what they do. They go to these extremes. And it doesn't matter if it's negative attention.
You're talking to a Northwest Ohio audience this weekend. We are airing on Sunday morning, and I just wanted to know, what's the one thing that you really want to hit home on this talk this week?
So I think there's a big, loneliness is a belief that I don't believe that I'm worthy of love and connection. If we can really understand and grasp that concept, we need, it's an urgent need to build confidence, to build self-worth, because the loneliness epidemic is really an epidemic of unworthiness. The
next epidemic we're dealing with. You've got a couple of books out there. How do people go about getting them?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. You can get my books on any place that you get books in America, absolutely.
All right, Unni Turrettini, it's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
Great conversation. We'll be back for our next segment, talk about the Gordie Howe International Bridge and the impact here in Northwest Ohio right after this. Welcome back. At some point next year, another gateway to economic possibilities will open just about an hour to our north. The Gordie Howe International Bridge, currently under construction, and there is a belief among many in Northwest Ohio and southeastern Michigan that once it's done, which could be late 2024, the Gordie Howe International Bridge would create a surge of economic opportunities for the region. In fact, it's been called a once-in-a-generation undertaking. We've assembled quite a team here today. Brian McMahon, Rex Huffman, and also Mike Beazley joining us here on set for Leading Edge. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Brian, let's start off. I think as late as this past weekend, you were once again up looking at the site. You are dripping with anticipation for this. Why?
Because I've kind of educated myself. I knew very little about the amount of commerce that takes place between Canada and the United States. I was surprised to learn, for example, that Canada is our largest trade partner. I thought it was China and possibly Mexico. But there is a lot more product that comes across that border, and even more so with the expanded bridge that's going to take place with the Gordie Howe Bridge. And as I looked at it, and I can see it now on the videos that you have, that gives you some small indication of how big this bridge is. It's supposed to be the biggest suspension bridge in North America.
But let's, for the layman's perspective, and gentlemen, you can all kind of chime in on this, but obviously the ambassador has been working well. It's been doing its job. It is just down the lake, or just down the river from this new construction. Why do we need another one, Mike?
I think there's three things that are at work there. Number one is the access to the interstates. There's bottlenecks on both sides of the Ambassador. We are getting off of the interstate, onto local roads with traffic lights on the U.S. side and the Canada side. The other piece of it is the delays and the time it takes, the backup. And that is money to the trucking industry that's running back and forth. That's time they don't want to spend. So we're looking to make it easier on in the U.S., easier on or off on the Canadian side, easier to get through and less delay time to provide another option. And that much difference, we think, can help our region and commerce in general.
Obviously, the junction to I-75, Rex, and where it comes through not only southeastern Michigan, but also Northwest Ohio. Northwest Ohio stands to gain, and that's where you guys are on this.
That's right. I mean, we think that I-75 and the Turnpike Interchange, we're at the true crossroads of America, because that's the longest north-south and longest east-west roads in the country. And that goes right through the heart of our 17-county RGP area. And from Lima to Toledo, all those areas are really experiencing a lot of economic growth, and we think a lot of it's because of the I-75 corridor.
Brian, before we go to our first break, one of the things that I read in an article that I found interesting, you discussed in it about the fact that so much of the land that is in southeast Michigan between Detroit and, let's say, the state line right there in, the Luna Pier area, you're saying that's wetlands. It's not usable. Toledo, a lot of that 75 area is spoken for already. But then in Wood County, once you hit across the Maumee River, all of a sudden possibilities start forming.
Well stated, because that's exactly
I think
what
I
happened.
stole it exactly from your quote,
No
Brian.
wonder it was so well stated.
Then it wasn't that well stated, Brian.
Yeah.
But, you know, just visualize this for a moment. Say you're driving up to the Detroit airport. Next time, pay a little more attention to what you see on both sides of the interstate. And what you'll see is when you come off the bridge from the north, there's not a whole lot of vacant land around the entrance, the gate on our side. So as you come down I-75, very quickly you come into Monroe. And when you come into Monroe, as we all know, Monroe is right on the edge of Lake Erie.
Sure.
So there's an abundant amount of wetlands that are very difficult and very expensive to overcome.
Can't build on that.
As you come further south to the state line, you enter Toledo. When you look at what's happening on both sides of the interstate, there's like no land. It's occupied by Canadian National Rail, and it's occupied by the G-Plan and a few other buildings. You have to come south of the river. And once you come south of the river, you come into Wood County. When you come into Wood County, all of a sudden, that's the connectivity, as Rex mentioned, between the turnpike and the interstate. But the other thing that happens is, once again for your audience, when you're driving the route on I-75 from the river, go south to Bowling Green, both sides of I-75, there's literally thousands of acres of land.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's happened, and to the credit of the two gentlemen sitting next to me, is I've never seen the level of regional cooperation that I'm seeing between Wood County, Toledo, and Lucas County as we see now. Some people say, but yeah, why does Toledo do that? Because if Toledo doesn't have any land in the equation, the reality is Toledo is a joint venture partner with some of the largest parcels of land in Wood County. So Toledo benefits from it. And so I'm hoping that the leadership, whatever you want to define that, in Northwest Ohio, continues to come together and figure out how we can capitalize on it.
I want to talk about the posturing, the preparing, because with each day we get closer and closer to this bad boy opening. Stay with us here on Leading Edge. We will discuss that on the other side. Talking about the Gordie Howe International Bridge, which is set to open next year, this gateway to economic, I guess, just gangbusters of the possibilities is what we're talking about here with Brian McMahon, Rex Huffman, and also Mike Beazley. One of the things I wanted to talk about, Mike, I'll start with you, is just posturing and getting industry ready, getting businesses ready, the work that's maybe already going on behind the scenes that we don't know about.
More than posturing, it's preparing. Obviously, this isn't a mission accomplished moment. It's nice to have a better connection. It's nice to have improved way to move commerce. We have to do our job. We've got to work on land assembly, water, sewer, local roadway, infrastructure, rail where we need it, continue to have those conversations. And so we have to, as long as we do that,
but that's just a good functioning form of government.
But it's harder than you think.
But why is it so essential to this bridge and the economic impact?
Well, if we don't have prepared sites that are available in an inventory that are ready to roll, not day one always, but a long-term way to feed locations where we can attract industry, we're not going to benefit from it. Maybe Fort Wayne will benefit, or a little further south. We view this as one economic region, and we're, Mayor Kapsakavich, the county commissioners, the Wood County commissioners, the Regional Growth Partnership, the Toledo Port Authority, Lucas County, the Wood County Port Authority, the Northwest Ohio Water and Sewer District, Toledo Water and Sewer, all really working together better in ways that I think I've ever seen right now.
We went out last week and we shot some new video as far as the crossroads. Rex, you talk about it, Crossroads of America, 80-90 right there, the turnpike out by Bass Pro. And I mean, Brian, it's no secret, you got a bunch of signs out there. You stand to gain. I mean, if some of these are chosen as possible sites, but regardless of your industry, your specialty, it's all marketing. It's making sure that people know these places are available. And we're not just talking about companies around Northwest Ohio. We're talking around the globe. Am I not hitting that?
That's right. But to Mike's point, I mean, all this development doesn't happen unless you have the infrastructure to support it. And so what we're doing really in our region, but mostly in Wood County, I can tell you it's a focus, is try to get our local highways connected to I-75, and you assume that's a given, and it's not. We have to make it so it's seamless for these sites to be able to serve I-75. And the same thing about water and wastewater. We have to be able to make sure these companies that need those amenities have it. And so it takes planning. It doesn't happen in a year. Yeah. It takes a good year to just design a simple water line. So planning that, and that's, again, to both these fellows' points, Northwest Ohio, especially this Toledo metropolitan area, we've never had it this good as far as regional cooperation.
Brian, I got to ask you a question. Intel down in the Columbus area, and there have been stories about when it went in, they said Northwest Ohio will gain, Northwest Ohio will gain. Well, then all of a sudden TMACOG comes out and says, well, there are actually 37 stoplights between here and Columbus that are going to pretty much put the kibosh on any of those trucks coming this way and making Northwest Ohio benefit. We don't have those barriers with this project. And you see it as a real possibility of being, from day one, we're ready to go.
Well, the difference now is for years we've talked about the 3 Cs competing with us. Today, we've got a distinct advantage, and you hear this in real estate all the time, location, location, location. We have the location. I mean, there's only one place where the 2 longest interstates in North America intersect, and it's in Wood County. Yeah. And so what's happened is just today, Rex and I had an opportunity to spend some time with a very large national developer. They played a role in both Amazon facilities in this market.
Got about 30 seconds. Go ahead.
And they have an appetite for multiple other sites, and they are a very strong believer in the potential of our logistics assets capitalizing on the commerce that's generated by this bridge. They're here already. Yeah. Most people don't know that, but they are.
And they do business in Canada and around the globe, and this would function very well for them. Gentlemen, I can't believe it. We've run out of time already, but I so appreciate the insight and talking about this. This is a story that will continue to develop. If you missed any part of our interview, you can go back and watch this on the WTOL YouTube page. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Jeff.